Hello, BookTube. I'm back with another Bookshelf Essentials video. These were the brainchild of David Wiley over on his channel, and they are designed to throw a spotlight on the books you can't do without. The books that are lodged among all the wheat and chaff of your collection that are essential. And the ones I want to talk about today are a whole set of books, and they don't have to be these little paperbacks. It's more the idea of them. I have these as ebooks. I have these in many different formats. I've had them in many different formats. I'm sure that I will again. I just have these because I was looking at my bookshelves for something else. I was on an entirely different quest when my eyes lighted on these and thought, oh, well, those are essentials, about as essential as they get. And we're talking Edgar Rice Burroughs here. No, you have not chosen the wrong BookTube channel. This is not Michael K. Vaughan. Some of us have also been in love with the writings of Edgar Rice Burroughs for a long, long time, and I'm one of those people. And I want to talk about John Carter of Mars. Edgar Rice Burroughs is most famous for Tarzan, his creation Tarzan. But his creation of his exotic Mars stories set on a planet Mars that never really existed except in the imagination of Percival Lowell. This is the world Barsoom. And a human, John Carter of Virginia, is mystically transported to that world in the opening story of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom novels, what will become his novels. John Carter arrives naked as the day he was born. He doesn't know any of the cultures. He doesn't know any of the languages. But he does know one thing right away, which is that Mars' lower gravity allows him superpowers. He can leap huge distances. He's much stronger than his size would indicate. And we are told in the first book, in the what would become the John Carter series, A Princess of Mars, with this great wraparound cover there. You've got the whole thing there. I thought this was Michael Whelan, but J. Scott Phillips assured me this is Frank Frazetta. It's a little bit unusual Frank Frazetta artwork, but I'm going to go with the expert. This is, as we learn in this book, not only does John Carter get superpowers on Mars, but he's always been superpowered. He's always been a supernatural being, even when he was on Earth, because he can't remember a time when he was a child. He's always been a man of about 30 and a warrior forever, for thousands of years. Once he's on Mars, he literally starts with nothing except himself. He doesn't have a weapon. He doesn't have a uniform. He doesn't have any allegiances. He doesn't know the language. He doesn't know or the lay of the land. He just has himself to rely on. Very similar in that regard to Tarzan. And quickly he learns the cultures of this world, because there are quite a few of them. It turns out that Barsoom teems with life, even though it is a dying world. Its oceans and streams and riverbeds are drying up. The atmosphere is too thin. It's artificially maintained, or it would go away completely. Life would not be possible on this planet without technology. And even that technology, you get the strong impression, as these books go on, you get the strong impression that the native inhabitants of Barsoom, most of them, don't understand how the technology that keeps their world going actually works. Edgar Rice Burroughs doesn't go into that in great detail. He gives you quite a bit of some of the various cultures of Mars in, for instance, the story that went on to become this first novel, A Princess of Mars. But he doesn't go into great depth even about them. We're told, as a small example, we're told that the cultures on Mars do have guns. They prefer knives and swords. But they do have guns, something called radium pistols, that fire bolts of radium that explode upon impact. It's not gunpowder, they're not bullets, but they do exist, and people do use them. We never learn anything but a fraction of what it is, who manufactures them. Does anybody on Barsoom actually know how to make a radium pistol? Are there factories for them? And what is radium, and where does that come from? And who learned it? Who discovered how to do it in the first place? And same thing with the atmosphere plant and the biologies of the various races involved here. As you can see, there are at least two on this cover that you can see. One is the main race on Mars are the red men and women, and they are basically human looking. They aren't quite human. They are, first of all, they're incredibly long lived, 1,000 years. And the women are oviparous, despite having ample breasts. They lay eggs. And they're also telepaths. Almost everybody on Barsoom is a telepath of one kind or another. So they aren't completely human. But you have those, but you also have these big four-armed green creatures, several different tribes of them. And we get details about all of those and about some of the setup of this thing. There are warring tribes, there are nomadic tribes, there are also city-states, powerful city-states occupied by the red men and women. And with anti-gravity flying machines that go between them. There are no roads, no cars. We learn a little bit about that and about their rulers and about some of the squabbles between them, but not much. Edgar Rice Burroughs is writing at speed here in order to entertain you. The point that I'm underscoring here is if Brandon Sanderson had written this book, A Princess of Mars, it would be 1,700 pages long. It would dwarf the size of The Way of Kings. He would not be able to leave anything unexplained. And Edgar Rice Burroughs does leave a lot unexplained here. And even the explanations that he gives, he doesn't stick with in the course of the series here. John Carter's superpowers wink in and out, depending on whether or not Burroughs is paying attention, depending on whether or not they're important for the book or for the plot. Same thing with the native telepathic abilities of the Barsoomians. In some books, they answer questions. In some books, those powers come in handy. In other books, they seem all but forgotten. Because Burroughs isn't concerned with that. He's mainly concerned with giving you fantastic stories. Thrilling stories of daring do and heroism and horrible beady-eyed villainy. Very primary colors stuff. He introduces another human to Mars, Ulysses Paxton, from another war. And also, like John Carter, makes the mystical leap between planets in extremis when it looks like he is going to die. Only Ulysses Paxton is not an eternal warrior. He's not immortal, as far as we know. He doesn't seem to ever think that way. He also gains superpowers on Mars, and then also Edgar Rice Burroughs almost immediately forgets that fact. But it automatically makes you wonder how many humans have come to Mars. How many of them have made that passage? Is it only when you're in the extremis of death? Is there any other way to do it? Seems like there's another way to do it. Seems like John Carter himself can make that transit in different ways than just in extremis. Burroughs doesn't explore it. And there's a limited number of these things. You have Fighting Man of Mars, with that giant creature that also has multiple legs. And these two, I don't know if you can make it out, but they're standing on a pile of bones. Of bones in this creature's lair. Bones and also weapons of warriors that have failed before them. There is Frank Frazetta's version of one of the airships here, and on this cover, John Carter is wearing clothes. Nobody on Barsoom wears clothes, but you got to do something for the cover here. But you can see the synthetic men of Mars. You can see what I'm talking about. Burroughs was going for adventures, for wild, sometimes surreal. Some of these books are more surreal than others. Adventures. He takes you all over the planet Barsoom. John Carter's arrival on Barsoom seems to precipitate a whole bunch of discoveries that nobody knew about for thousands of years. Whole races that John Carter or the characters in these novels discover for the very first time are still living on Mars. Whole bunch of discoveries about sometimes sacred religious rituals that turn out not to be quite so sacred, to have horrible, nefarious explanations. And we get Lana of Gothal. There are two warriors fighting a beast in the snow. And there's another airship up there. Here you get the final one, John Carter of Mars, that has two little novellas in it with this gorgeous, gorgeous cover. Look at that, the cities in the background, the two moons of Mars up in the sky there, and a dying world underneath them. You can't really make this out, but it's a dying world. It's a world of endless dry river and ocean beds. It's a huge amount of potential here. And Edgar Rice Burroughs, the creator of these stories, very intentionally ignores the potential in order to tell the stories. That's entirely his own decision. He's free to do that if he wants, and that's what he does. So if you cut your teeth on things like Brandon Sanderson, on modern storytelling techniques in 21st century that load you with every kind of world-building detail in the world, you're not going to find them here. You're going to find precious little of that. Instead, you're going to find the part that, unfortunately, a lot of writers, like Brandon Sanderson, tend not to do it well, which is the adventures, which is the reason to keep reading, other than wanting to know how the plants work or what the ingredients of a particular salve are or whatnot. If you want to know that sort of stuff, well, then you're going to wish that Princess of Mars were 1,000 pages long. But once upon a time, when these were coming out from Del Rey, you did have a source book, which was the guide to Barsoom, with a Michael Whelan cover there. That, again, they have clothes on, but they shouldn't. But this is not a story of Barsoom. This just takes everything that we learn about Barsoom and puts it in a book. And if you've been watching Michael K. Vaughan's channel, you know that finally Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated has put him on their mailing list. So he got a box of goodies from them. And one of the goodies that he got is something that I would love to get. I guess I could use his discount code to buy it. You certainly can. Which is an Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated authorized pastiche novel of John Carter. Not their first one, I don't think. I forget the name of it. But if you go to their website is linked through Mike's video, and you can see how many Barsoom pastiche novels they have done. They have authorized. I'd be really curious to read those. That's the one thing that I think is missing here, is follow-ups to Barsoom or to John Carter of Venus, or Carter of Venus, or Carson of Venus, or, well, I would say Tarzan, but I'm of the rather heretical opinion that we have as many Tarzan adventures as we need. If you go to the comic books, in addition to the novels that we have, you're probably fine for Tarzan. But with Barsoom, I don't think I'm alone. I think every reader who's ever read this whole series and wish there were more of it. When you read these and you love them, you always wish there were more of them. I think every reader who's ever read these wished that there were more stories. And maybe longer stories, more detailed stories, different kinds of stories. Those don't exist. And I don't know how much mainstream distribution the Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated products actually have. Certainly, I have never seen one in a bookstore, in a retail bookstore. I've never seen them used, and that would make sense if it's only collectors who are buying these things, so they wouldn't get rid of them. That doesn't seem to me to be a good way to honor the original vision of Edgar Rice Burroughs, who would have bridled in horror at the idea that his stories were not in bookstores. He would have bridled in horror at the very notion that they were some sort of subscription-only thing. I don't know if they are, but I once upon a time went to a lot of retail bookstores. I've gone to a lot of retail bookstores in my time. Never seen any of the stuff that Mike was holding up or anything like it in a retail bookstore. Still available. You could go there and buy it. He has a link because they sent him these things. You can use his discount code to get a percentage off. I imagine that these things are pricey. Now that's what I miss whenever I reread this particular bookshelf essential. The thing that I miss is that there aren't more of them. And maybe just a bit, I also get a little wistful at Edgar Rice Burroughs Incorporated. Maybe I get a little wistful at that because, sure, when there was a big budget Hollywood movie in the theaters, then there were reprint volumes of some of these things, and there have been reprint volumes in the past. But I look at, for instance, Robert E. Howard. I look at Ballantine, I think, did a 3-volume paperback set of Conan with newly commissioned black and white illustrations. Those are lovely volumes. They're fantastic volumes. We don't have anything like that for these that I know of. It'd be nice if in bookstores, something in bookstores that people can see and go and buy. But these are essential anyway. Maybe the fact that there are a very limited number of them, very limited number of stories, maybe that makes them all the more essential. God knows I've gone back to these things more times than I can count. I have this volume, but I know the contents of this volume backwards and forwards, so I don't actually need it. And these others, sure, you're going to have your favorites. Some of them just don't work for me. The Edgar Rice Burroughs had he had an imaginative tick. He mostly controls it, but sometimes not. He had a tick for the grotesque. Uh, he absorbed the island of Dr. Moreau as a younger hack writer. He absorbed it, and it shows in a couple of these John Carter novels. It shows where you get grotesqueries, you get disembodied heads, or you can actually see it on the cover of Synthetic Men of Mars. You've got not only a disfigured hero, but disfigured creatures roaming around in the book. When you get to those books and you get to the sections in those books, they really ladle on the shock horror prose in a way that it doesn't work on me. It never has worked on me, and so maybe those are low spots. When I reread these, those are low spots. I'm far more likely to reread Thuvia, Maid of Mars, than I am to read those, or the first three, which are the closest that happen in this series to one trilogy. It's the first three novels really do. I mean, they have their serious weaknesses as that, but they clearly do work in that way. If you wanted to know, which makes it all the more maddening that when some of those John Carter anthologies come out, they don't have the first three books. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they skip around. You have to have the first book, Princess of Mars, but it's only a small tone of frustration. I am not saying that this is the equivalent of other bookshelf essentials, where like, for instance, Virginia Woolf, where I'm talking about something that does not exist at all. This is not that. These little mass market paperbacks are perfect. They are perfect. I am immensely happy with them. so it's just I look at these things and I dream about what I don't have, what I've never seen, but these are just perfect. These are just fine. So that's your bookshelf essential for today. If you have not experienced Edgar Rice Burroughs at all, well, I don't know what to tell you. But if you're looking for Edgar Rice Burroughs doing science fiction, not doing Tarzan, then read Princess of Mars. It will take you an hour to do. And I wonder if you won't fall under its spell. I certainly did. I didn't need to go on to the next book to fall in love with this series. Maybe you would too. Maybe it becomes an essential of yours. Anyway, I have these. I also have a big omnibus edition, and I also have the old science fiction book club editions that are really nice. I vary between them depending on which is nearest to me when I feel like returning to Barsoom for a palate cleanser, which certainly I've been doing that for, 28 whole years. So that certainly counts as an essential. I couldn't do without John Carter in my collection. So there you go. There's a bookshelf essential for today. I'll wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.